A warm summer breeze carries the sound of laughter and music from the Lewis family's backyard. The celebration for Jamal's birthday transforms their suburban home into a vibrant gathering space. Multicolored balloons bob gently in the wind, tied to white folding chairs scattered across the well-maintained lawn. The music, a mix of contemporary hip-hop and classic R&B, pulses through speakers at a reasonable volume, just loud enough for the dancers, but not enough to disturb the peace. Vanessa Lewis moves through the crowd with practiced ease, balancing a tray of freshly frosted cupcakes. Her coral sundress matches the party's summer theme, and her warm smile welcomes each guest as she passes. The desserts, topped with blue frosting and silver sprinkles, disappear quickly as children and adults alike grab them. "Make sure everyone gets one," she calls out to the kids who crowd around her, their paper plates extended hopefully. Meanwhile, across the street, Gary Thompson stands at his second-floor window, his fingers gripping the curtain until his knuckles turn white. His jaw clenches as he watches another car pull up to the Lewis house, adding to the row of vehicles already lining the street. The arrival of each new guest makes his blood pressure rise a little more. "Helen!" Gary calls out to his wife, his voice sharp with irritation. "Come look at this circus across the street." Helen appears behind him, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "They're having another one of their parties," he says, making air quotes with his fingers. "Third one this month. Nobody has this many legitimate reasons to celebrate." His wife sighs, already tired of his complaints. "It's just a birthday party, Gary. I saw them putting up decorations this morning." But Gary isn't listening. His mind races with possibilities, each more sinister than the last. "Nobody in this neighborhood could afford parties like this on a regular basis," he mutters, more to himself than to Helen. "They must be running some kind of operation. Drugs, probably. Or maybe they're fencing stolen goods." Helen starts to walk away, but Gary's hand shoots out and grabs her arm. "Look at all these people coming and going. Different cars every time. Don't tell me you don't think that's suspicious." Without waiting for her response, Gary reaches for his phone on the windowsill. His fingers shake slightly as he dials 911, adrenaline and righteous indignation fueling his actions. Helen watches from the doorway, her expression a mixture of resignation and disappointment, as her husband begins speaking into the phone. "Yes, hello? I need to report suspicious activity," Gary says, his voice trembling with what he perceives as justified concern. The house at 1242 Oak Street. There's an unusually large gathering. Lots of people coming and going. Given the neighborhood's recent problems, I think this warrants investigation. The dispatcher's voice remains professional as they take down the information, but Gary adds more details, his imagination working overtime. "They've had multiple gatherings like this, different vehicles every time. It seems organized, too organized for just a family party." What Gary doesn't realize, as he peers through his curtains at the joyful celebration across the street, is that his prejudiced assumptions are about to backfire spectacularly. The man he's reporting, Anthony Lewis, who at this moment is grilling hamburgers and laughing with his guests, isn't just another neighbor he can intimidate or harass. But this information remains hidden for now, as Gary ends his call with a satisfied smirk, believing he's doing his civic duty. The festive atmosphere shatters with the distinctive sound of police sirens. 2 patrol cars pull up to the Lewis residence, their lights casting blue and red shadows across the shocked faces of party guests. The music cuts off abruptly, leaving an uncomfortable silence broken only by confused whispers and the sound of approaching footsteps. Anthony Lewis sets down his grilling tongs and straightens his posture, years of federal training kicking in automatically. He watches as 3 officers approach, their hands resting casually but noticeably near their holsters. The party guests instinctively step back, creating a clear path between the police and their host. "Good afternoon, officers," Anthony says calmly, reaching slowly into his back pocket. I'm Special Agent Anthony Lewis, FBI. He produces his credentials with practiced efficiency, holding them steady for inspection. May I ask what brings you to my son's birthday party? The officers exchange glances, clearly not expecting this development. The lead officer, Officer Martinez, takes Anthony's credentials and examines them carefully while her partners maintain their positions. The tension in the air is palpable as party guests watch the scene unfold, parents instinctively moving closer to their children. We received a complaint about suspicious activity at this address, Officer Martinez explains, returning Anthony's credentials. Multiple reports of large gatherings with varying vehicles and individuals coming and going. She pauses, clearly reassessing the situation. Would you happen to know who might have made such observations? Anthony's expression remains neutral, but his eyes drift toward Gary's house. I believe our neighbor across the street might have some concerns. He's shown particular interest in our family's activities since we moved in. Officer Martinez signals to one of her partners, who walks across the street to Gary's house. Gary answers the door with an air of smug satisfaction that quickly falters when he sees the officer's stern expression. Sir, could you explain the nature of your complaint? The officer asks, notepad in hand. Gary shifts uncomfortably, suddenly aware that several party guests are watching from across the street. Well, these gatherings seem suspicious, Gary stammers, his previous confidence evaporating. Different cars every time, lots of people. It's not normal for this neighborhood. Back at the Lewis residence, Anthony begins a quiet conversation with Officer Martinez, his FBI training evident in his methodical approach. Officer, I'd like to file a report of my own. We've experienced several incidents of harassment since moving here, and I believe today's false report might be part of a pattern. Vanessa joins her husband, her expression composed but determined. We've been documenting everything, she adds, pulling out her phone to show a series of dated entries and photographs. Anthony continues, his voice level but firm. As a federal agent, I'm particularly concerned about potential civil rights violations. Would you be willing to take my statement regarding these incidents? The situation has completely reversed. Gary watches from his doorway as Officer Martinez begins taking detailed notes from Anthony and Vanessa, while party guests slowly resume their celebrations, though with more subdued tones. The afternoon sun catches the FBI credentials still visible in Anthony's hand, a detail that doesn't escape Gary's notice. The realization that he's just filed a false police report against an FBI agent begins to sink in, and Gary's face pales visibly. He retreats into his house, closing the door firmly behind him, but not before he sees Anthony glancing his way with a calculated look that suggests this isn't over. The day after the party incident, Anthony and Vanessa sit at their kitchen table, laptops open and coffee mugs steaming between them. The morning light streams through the windows as they research security systems, determined to protect their family and gather evidence. These high-resolution cameras have night vision and motion detection, Vanessa says, turning her screen to show Anthony. They'll record everything, and the footage uploads directly to secure cloud storage. Her legal background as a civil rights attorney shows in her methodical approach to documentation. Anthony nods, examining the specifications. Let's install them at all key points: front yard, backyard, and especially facing Gary's house. We need to be strategic about placement. He pulls out a diagram of their property, marking potential camera locations with precise X's. His FBI training transforms what could have been simple home security into a tactical operation. They pause their discussion as Jamal and Maya enter the kitchen, both still processing yesterday's events. Jamal, at 15, carries himself with the careful dignity of someone who's learned too early about the world's harsh realities. 12-year-old Maya clutches her tablet, where she's been researching similar incidents in their neighborhood. Dad, Jamal starts, I saw you marking up that diagram. Are we really installing cameras? His voice carries a mix of curiosity and concern. Anthony gestures for both children to sit. Yes, we are. But this isn't about living in fear. It's about being prepared and protected. He shows them the planned camera locations, treating them as capable participants rather than children to be sheltered. Maya leans forward, pointing to a spot on the diagram. What about there, near the maple tree? That's where Gary always stands when he's pretending to check his mail but really watching us. Vanessa smiles at her daughter's observation skills. Good eye, Maya. We'll definitely cover that area. She makes a note on their planning document, then addresses both children. This is about documentation, not escalation. We're not trying to provoke anyone. We're protecting ourselves legally. The family's conversation is interrupted by the sound of a doorbell. It's the security company, arriving to install the cameras. As the technicians work, the Lewis family watches from various windows as Gary emerges from his house, pacing his driveway with agitation. He pulls out his phone several times, apparently making calls, his gestures becoming increasingly animated as he notices the security installation. Look at him, Jamal whispers to Maya as they observe from upstairs. He's totally freaking out. Kids, Anthony calls from below. Remember what we discussed. No engaging with him, no matter what he does. Let the cameras do their job. By afternoon, the system is fully installed. 8 cameras strategically positioned around the property, their presence obvious enough to serve as both documentation and deterrent. The technician walks Anthony through the mobile app interface, showing how they can access live feeds and recorded footage from anywhere. Vanessa tests the system, watching the high-definition feed of Gary still pacing in his driveway, now talking animatedly into his phone. Crystal clear, she confirms, saving a clip of his suspicious behavior. That evening, the family gathers in the living room, reviewing the security footage from their first day. They watch as Gary makes 3 separate trips to check his mail, each time lingering to stare at their house. He attempts to appear casual, but the cameras catch every furtive glance and suspicious pause. Look at his face when he noticed the cameras, Maya points out, as they watch Gary's expression change from confusion to anger on the footage. Anthony nods grimly. He's realizing he's not in control anymore. But remember, we're not trying to antagonize him. We're protecting ourselves and gathering evidence. Sometimes the best defense is simply having the truth on record. From his window across the street, Gary watches the Lewis family's silhouettes moving behind their curtains, his jaw clenched in frustration. The cameras seem to stare back at him, their small red lights blinking steadily in the growing darkness. He pulls his curtains shut with unnecessary force, but not before making a decision. These cameras won't stop him. They've just made things personal. Jamal sits cross-legged on his bed, staring at his phone's screen as messages pour in from his school friends. The video of the police interrupting his birthday party has spread through their social circles, sparking outrage and calls for action. His fingers hover over the keyboard as he considers his response. "You can't just let this slide, Jay," reads a message from his best friend Marcus. "You've got the perfect platform to expose this." Other messages echo similar sentiments, urging him to speak out. After a moment of contemplation, Jamal opens TikTok and begins recording. "So here's what really happened at my birthday party," he starts, his voice steady despite his nervous energy. He details the events clearly, avoiding dramatic flourishes but letting the facts speak for themselves. This isn't just about one party or one neighbor. This is about patterns we see every day. Meanwhile, down the hall, Maya attends her first virtual meeting with the Youth Social Justice Alliance, a group she discovered through her school's diversity club. Her laptop screen shows a grid of young faces, all engaged in serious discussion about community activism. "My name is Maya Lewis," she introduces herself when it's her turn. "I joined because I want to learn how to fight back against racism the right way." She shares her family's recent experience, and the other members lean forward in their digital squares, nodding in understanding. The siblings' paths begin to intersect as their separate initiatives gain momentum. Jamal's TikTok video goes viral, accumulating hundreds of thousands of views within hours. He follows up with carefully crafted posts about similar incidents in their community, always maintaining a factual, evidence-based approach that would make his FBI agent father proud. "Check this out," Jamal calls to Maya that evening, showing her his phone. His latest video has been shared by several civil rights organizations, and local news stations are requesting interviews. Maya rushes to her room and returns with her laptop, showing him the Youth Alliance's response plan they've been developing. "We're organizing a peaceful community awareness event," she explains, pointing to the detailed outline on her screen. "The Alliance has experience with this. They know how to make it impactful, while keeping everyone safe." Their phones buzz simultaneously. Both have received texts from their mother. "Family meeting in 5 minutes," Vanessa's message reads. The siblings exchange knowing looks before heading downstairs. In the living room, Anthony and Vanessa wait with serious expressions. "We've seen your social media posts," Anthony begins, making both children tense slightly. But then he smiles. "And we're proud of how you're handling this. You're being strategic and responsible." Vanessa adds, "But we need to coordinate our efforts. Maya, your youth group's plans need to align with our legal strategy. And Jamal, we should have our lawyer review your posts before they go up, just to be safe." "Did you see the comments on my last video?" Jamal asks, pulling up his phone. "People are sharing their own stories. It's not just us. This is happening everywhere." Maya nods enthusiastically. "The Alliance says that's why documentation is so important. When we connect these incidents, we show it's a systemic problem." Anthony leans forward, his FBI training evident in his tactical approach to the situation. "You're both right. But remember, Gary's watching everything we do. We need to be extra careful about what we share publicly." The family discussion is interrupted by a notification from their security system. On the TV screen, they watch as Gary stops at his mailbox again, this time photographing their house with his phone. The cameras catch his sneer as he notices Jamal's car with its new "Stand Against Hate" bumper sticker. "Let him look," Maya says firmly. "We're not hiding anymore." Jamal opens his laptop, already planning his next video. Maybe it's time to show people exactly who's really causing problems in this neighborhood. He starts typing, drafting a script that will expose Gary's patterns of harassment without crossing any legal lines. The siblings work late into the evening, their separate but parallel efforts merging into a unified strategy. Jamal's social media presence grows more sophisticated, while Maya's involvement with the Youth Alliance provides structure and support for their upcoming community actions. From his window, Gary watches the lights burning in the Lewis house, unaware that his every move is not just being recorded, but is becoming part of a larger narrative about systemic racism and community resistance. Anthony sits in his home office late one night, methodically reviewing weeks of security footage. His FBI training has taught him to look for patterns, and something about Gary's behavior doesn't add up. He notices regular visits to Gary's house between 2 and 4 a.m., always with cars parking a block away, visitors approaching on foot. "Vanessa," he calls quietly to his wife, who's working on legal briefs nearby. "Come look at this." He cues up several clips showing Gary's nighttime activities. The high-resolution cameras capture clear images of furtive exchanges through Gary's side door, visitors leaving with small packages. Vanessa leans closer to the screen, her legal mind already cataloging potential implications. "Those aren't social calls," she observes, noting the patterns. Same time windows, similar package sizes, visitors never staying longer than 5 minutes. Anthony nods grimly. Classic signs of a drug distribution operation. The racist harassment might be a cover, keeping attention on us so nobody looks too closely at his activities. He pulls up another clip, showing Gary retrieving something from a false bottom in his garden planter. "Look at this." Vanessa points to a timestamp. "These exchanges increased after we installed the cameras." He's getting sloppy, probably paranoid. She reaches for her laptop, pulling up records of Gary's previous address. There were 3 drug-related arrests within his old neighborhood during his residence there, but no direct connections to him. Their discussion is interrupted by a soft knock. Maya stands in the doorway, holding her tablet. "Mom, Dad, I think you should see this." She pulls up a social media post showing Gary arguing with another neighbor, his gestures aggressive. "This was posted an hour ago. He's yelling about undesirables in the neighborhood, but look at his pocket." The video clearly shows a suspicious bulge in Gary's jacket, the outline suggesting a small package similar to those captured in the nighttime footage. Anthony straightens, years of FBI investigative experience clicking into place. His operation's bigger than just this neighborhood. The timing of his complaints about our family, the increased activity at night, the pattern of visitors. He's using racial tensions as camouflage. Vanessa starts taking detailed notes. "We need to be careful how we handle this," she warns. "If he realizes we're building a case, he might escalate beyond harassment." She glances toward Maya, maternal concern evident in her expression. "What about Jamal's social media campaign?" Maya asks. "Should he stop?" "No," Anthony decides after a moment's thought. "That might tip him off that we're onto something bigger, but we need to ensure everyone's safety first." He pulls up the security systems app, adding new motion detection zones around their property. Vanessa starts outlining their next steps on her legal pad. "We should alert local law enforcement quietly. Build the case properly. Gary's not just a racist neighbor anymore, he's potentially dangerous." The family falls silent as headlights sweep across their window. Through the security feed, they watch Gary emerge from his car, nervously checking his surroundings before hurrying inside with a duffel bag. "He's getting more careless," Anthony observes. Pressure from the community attention is affecting his judgment. He begins compiling the evidence, timestamps, vehicle descriptions, patterns of behavior. His FBI training helps him organize the information into a coherent narrative of criminal activity. Vanessa touches his arm gently. "We need to tell the kids about this new development. They need to understand the real dangers we're dealing with now." Maya, still standing in the doorway, speaks up. "We're already careful, Mom. But now, we have proof he's the real threat to the neighborhood, not us." Anthony saves another clip as Gary's porch light flicks on, illuminating another late-night visitor approaching his door. "Tomorrow, I'll contact some colleagues at the bureau. This isn't just about protecting our family anymore. It's about stopping someone who's using racial harassment to hide criminal activity." The security cameras continue their silent vigil as the Lewis family begins planning their next moves, aware that they're no longer just documenting racism. They're unraveling a criminal enterprise hidden behind a facade of neighborhood vigilance. The community center buzzes with anticipation as people file in for what was advertised as a neighborhood unity meeting. The large room fills quickly with faces from every corner of the community. Families from Jamal's viral videos, members of Maya's Youth Alliance, and neighbors who've witnessed Gary's harassment firsthand. Anthony stands at the podium, his FBI badge visible on his belt, lending authority to his presence. He surveys the crowd, noting Gary's absence but spotting several of his regular nighttime visitors shifting uncomfortably in the back rows. "Thank you all for coming," Anthony begins, his voice carrying years of professional composure. "We're here today not just to discuss racial harassment in our community, but to address the larger issues of safety and unity that affect us all." He carefully avoids mentioning the ongoing investigation into Gary's activities, focusing instead on community solidarity. Mrs. Chen, who runs the corner market, raises her hand. "Last week, I saw Gary photographing customers entering my store. He claimed he was documenting suspicious behavior, but it was just family shopping." Other neighbors nod, similar stories bubbling up throughout the room. Vanessa steps forward, her legal pad ready. "These incidents aren't isolated," she explains, showcasing a map of reported harassment cases. What we're seeing is a pattern of behavior designed to divide our community. She deliberately omits any mention of their surveillance footage of Gary's drug operation. The meeting transforms as more residents share their experiences. Mr. Rodriguez describes how Gary reported his family barbecue as a suspicious gathering. The Williams family recounts Gary photographing their teenage sons walking home from basketball practice. Each story builds upon the last, creating a tapestry of shared experiences. Jamal, sitting with his social media team, other tech-savvy teens who've helped spread awareness, documents everything. His latest TikTok series, Communities Against Hate, has garnered millions of views. Maya huddles with her Youth Alliance members, taking notes for their upcoming awareness campaign. The solution starts with unity, Anthony continues, moving to the heart of his message. When we stand together, document everything, and support each other, we create a community too strong to be divided by hate or fear. An elderly woman stands slowly, her voice shaking but clear. "I've lived here 40 years, she announces. "I've watched this neighborhood change and grow. What Gary's doing, it's not about protecting our community. It's about control through fear." The energy in the room shifts as people begin organizing into action groups. A neighborhood watch program forms, not to police residents, but to protect them from harassment. Local business owners discuss installing their own security cameras. Teachers from the local school volunteer to lead youth discussions about diversity and inclusion. Vanessa orchestrates the formation of a legal aid network, connecting residents with civil rights attorneys willing to document and address harassment cases. Knowledge is power, she reminds everyone. The more we document, the stronger our position becomes. As the meeting concludes, people linger, exchanging phone numbers and forming messaging groups. The isolation Gary tried to create has backfired, bringing the community closer together instead. Outside the community center, Anthony notices several unmarked police vehicles discreetly monitoring the area. His fellow FBI agents are watching, gathering their own evidence about Gary's operation, while the community meeting serves as the perfect cover. Maya approaches her father, clutching her tablet. "Dad, look at this," she whispers, showing him a live feed from their home security cameras. Gary is outside his house, pacing nervously as he watches cars return from the meeting. His phone pressed to his ear, his agitation visible even from a distance. "He's realizing he's losing control," Anthony murmurs, sharing a knowing look with Vanessa. The community's unity isn't just threatening Gary's racist harassment, it's threatening his entire criminal operation. As families head home, there's a new sense of purpose in the air. What started as one family's stand against racism has evolved into a community-wide movement for change, unknowingly helping to expose something even darker lurking beneath the surface. Gary paces in his dimly lit living room, phone calls going unanswered as more of his business associates distance themselves from the increasing scrutiny. The community meeting has disrupted his carefully constructed facade, and his drug operation is suffering. His reflection in the window shows a man unraveling, his usual controlled demeanor replaced by visible anxiety. "Someone has to know something about this FBI agent," he mutters, scrolling through social media posts about Anthony Lewis. His laptop screen displays multiple attempts to dig up dirt on the family, credit reports, property records, anything he can use to discredit them. In frustration, he creates anonymous social media accounts, beginning to spread fabricated stories about Anthony. "FBI agent under investigation for corruption," reads one post. "Sources claim Lewis family involved in federal crime ring," claims another. His hands shake as he types, desperation driving him to increasingly risky tactics. At the Lewis household, Vanessa's phone buzzes with alerts about the new smear campaign. "Anthony," she calls out, showing him the posts. "He's getting sloppy, making direct attacks now. She forwards the links to their legal team, documenting each false claim methodically. Community members quickly rally in support of the Lewis family. Comments flood the fake posts. "I've known Anthony Lewis for months. He's exactly what an FBI agent should be." This is obviously fake news from the racist neighbor. We see through these lies. The Lewis family has brought nothing but positive change to our neighborhood. Gary's attempts to spread disinformation backfire as Jamal's social media following helps identify and report the fake accounts. The teenager's tech-savvy friends trace IP addresses, linking the posts directly to Gary's home network. "Mom, Dad," Maya calls from the security monitor station they've set up in the den. Gary's talking to someone in his driveway. The cameras show Gary in an animated discussion with a rough-looking man they've never seen before. Their body language suggests tension, possibly an argument about money. Anthony watches the feed intently, recognizing the signs of a drug operation under stress. He's losing control of his suppliers, he observes quietly to Vanessa. This is when things could get dangerous. Vanessa immediately sends a group text to their neighborhood watch network, alerting them to be extra vigilant. Within minutes, porch lights click on up and down the street, and neighbors casually emerge to walk their dogs or check their mail, demonstrating silent solidarity. The community's response infuriates Gary further. He storms inside, emerging minutes later to photograph houses with their lights on, muttering about conspiracies and them all being in on it. Later that evening, Jamal discovers online postings revealing the Lewis family's home address and Anthony's FBI status. "He's trying to put us at risk," Jamal realizes, immediately reporting the posts to his father. Anthony makes several quiet phone calls to his FBI colleagues, knowing that Gary's escalating behavior is providing valuable evidence, not just of harassment, but of his larger criminal enterprise. Vanessa gathers the family in the living room for an emergency meeting. "We need to be extra careful now," she warns, especially addressing the children. "No going anywhere alone, no direct engagement with Gary. Document everything." Through their windows, they watch as cars slowly drive past their house. Not Gary's usual drug customers, but neighbors performing informal patrol duty, protecting their own. The community has formed an invisible shield around the Lewis family. Gary stands at his window, watching his control slip away. His phone buzzes with another text from his supplier. "Too hot. Deal's off." His face contorts with rage as he realizes his dual life, both as the neighborhood vigilante and as a drug distributor, is crumbling. The security cameras catch his every move as he makes frantic phone calls, his gestures becoming more erratic. The Lewis family watches silently, knowing that Gary's increasing desperation makes him more dangerous, but also more likely to make a crucial mistake. "He's planning something," Anthony warns his family, recognizing the signs of someone backed into a corner. "Stay alert. This isn't over yet." Anthony sits in his home office, surrounded by multiple screens displaying surveillance footage, police reports, and community updates. He's methodically organizing evidence of both Gary's harassment and drug activities, preparing for what he knows will be a crucial confrontation. "Look at this pattern," he tells Vanessa, pointing to a timeline he's created. The frequency of Gary's drug deals has decreased, but the quantities have increased, a sign he's trying to move his inventory quickly. He's preparing for something big. Meanwhile, Jamal and Maya are busy coordinating their biggest community event yet, a Unity in Action festival planned for the weekend. The local park has been reserved, permits obtained, and dozens of families have signed up to participate. "We've got food trucks, music, and speakers lined up," Maya explains during their family security briefing. The Youth Alliance is handling the social media campaign. She shows them the event page, already trending locally with hundreds of confirmed attendees. Jamal adds, "And I've arranged for live streaming. Everything will be documented." His recent videos about community solidarity have gone viral, drawing attention from national civil rights organizations. Vanessa reviews the security plans one more time. We've coordinated with local police for visible presence, and your father's FBI colleagues will be monitoring discreetly. She marks key observation points on a map of the park. Every entrance and exit will be covered. Through their security feeds, they watch Gary pacing in his backyard, having animated phone conversations. The camera's audio picks up fragments. It has to be done before. They're leaving me no choice. His agitation is visible even from a distance. Anthony's phone buzzes, a text from his FBI surveillance team. Subject made contact with known dealers. Large transaction expected. He shares a knowing look with Vanessa. They're getting close to having enough evidence for an arrest. That evening, the family gathers in their living room for final preparations. The security monitors show increased activity around Gary's house. Cars driving by slowly, people watching from parked vehicles down the street. But these aren't community members. They're Gary's increasingly nervous associates. Tomorrow's event needs to go perfectly, Anthony instructs his family. Stay alert, stay visible, and most importantly, stay safe. He doesn't share his suspicion that Gary might see the community gathering as his last chance to act before his operation completely unravels. Jamal checks his phone, scrolling through messages from his social media network. People are sharing Gary's recent threatening posts. They're documenting everything. His followers have become an informal intelligence network, tracking Gary's online activity and reporting suspicious behavior. Maya pulls up the event layout on her tablet. The Youth Alliance will have observation teams here, here, and here. She points to different locations. We're calling it peacekeeping, but really, we're watching for Gary. Vanessa receives an email from their lawyer. Evidence package ready for submission, waiting for final documentation from tomorrow's event. She forwards it to Anthony, who nods grimly. They're building an airtight case, but they need to ensure everyone's safety until it's complete. Through the windows, they can see neighbors installing additional security lights and cameras, creating an interconnected surveillance network that leaves no blind spots. The community has transformed from isolated households into a unified force. The security system alerts them to movement. Gary is loading something into his car trunk, working quickly in the growing darkness. Anthony makes a quick call to his FBI team, speaking in coded phrases about increased surveillance. Whatever he's planning, Anthony tells his family, will be ready. The community is stronger than his hatred, and his criminal enterprise is crumbling. He checks his phone one last time. Messages from neighbors, law enforcement, and community organizers all confirm their readiness for tomorrow. The night settles over the neighborhood, but no one is really sleeping. Tomorrow will bring either resolution or confrontation, and both the Lewis family and their supporters are prepared for either outcome. The Unity in Action Festival transforms the local park into a vibrant display of community solidarity. Families set up booths, music fills the air, and children play while carefully positioned security cameras record every angle. The atmosphere is celebratory, but underneath runs a current of vigilance. From the main stage, Jamal prepares to address the crowd, his social media livestream already attracting thousands of viewers. His phone continuously updates with new follower alerts and supportive comments. The youth's confident stance shows how far he's come from the birthday party incident that started it all. Our community refuses to be divided by hate, Jamal begins, his voice steady and clear. We stand together, we watch out for each other, and we will not be intimidated. The crowd erupts in applause, phones raised to capture the moment. Meanwhile, Anthony receives urgent texts from his FBI surveillance team. Their cameras have captured Gary making multiple trips to his car, nervously checking his surroundings. The footage shows him attempting to dispose of documents and small packages in various neighbors' trash bins, a desperate attempt to clear evidence. Vanessa, coordinating with legal observers scattered throughout the event, notices several of Gary's known associates watching from the park's periphery. She signals to the undercover officers positioned nearby, who begin quietly documenting these individuals. Maya's Youth Alliance team monitors their section of the park when one member spots Gary parking his car nearby. Subject in sight, Maya texts to her father, using the code phrases they'd established. Through her tablet, she begins recording his increasingly erratic behavior. Gary's demeanor has changed dramatically. His usual calculated movements are replaced by nervous energy as he realizes his entire operation is exposed. The community's cameras catch him making one last panicked phone call. "They're all watching. I need to move everything now." The festival reaches its peak as community leaders take turns sharing stories of resilience and unity. Each speaker adds another piece to the narrative of a neighborhood transformed, while Gary's increasingly desperate attempts to salvage his operation are caught on dozens of cameras. "Look," Maya whispers to her mother, showing her tablet. Their home security feed reveals 2 police cars quietly pulling up to Gary's house. Officers begin a methodical search of his property, armed with recently obtained warrants based on the accumulated evidence. Anthony receives the confirmation he's been waiting for. Gary's suppliers, under separate surveillance, have been apprehended with significant quantities of drugs and documentation of their operation. The web of evidence is complete, connecting Gary's racist harassment campaign to his drug distribution network. From his position at the park's edge, Gary watches his world unravel. The cameras capture his realization as he sees police vehicles approaching his location. His phone buzzes continuously with alerts from his associates, each message confirming another piece of his network being dismantled. Vanessa's phone lights up with messages from their lawyer. Evidence confirmed, moving to next phase. She catches Anthony's eye across the crowd, giving a subtle nod. Their months of careful documentation and community organizing have created an insurmountable case. The festival continues, its success serving as both celebration and cover for the law enforcement operation unfolding quietly in the background. Every photo shared, every video posted, every song played adds to the documentation of a community united against hatred and crime. As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the park, Gary makes one last desperate attempt to destroy evidence on his phone. But the Lewis family's security cameras have already archived months of his activities, and the community's unified surveillance network has filled in any gaps. "It's done," Anthony texts to his family group chat, watching as Gary realizes he's completely surrounded by law enforcement. The community's cameras capture every moment of his final defeat, recording not just an arrest, but the triumph of unity over division. Red and blue lights flash across Gary's face as officers lead him from the park in handcuffs. The community watches in silence, phones recording every moment. Not just an arrest for racial harassment, but the dismantling of a drug operation that had hidden behind a facade of neighborhood vigilance. Inside Gary's house, FBI agents and local police uncover the full extent of his operation. Drugs hidden in false walls, detailed records of transactions disguised as neighborhood watch reports, and evidence of his systematic harassment campaign against the Lewis family and other minorities in the community. Anthony stands with his fellow agents, his dual roles as FBI agent and community member finally converging. "We found something interesting," one agent calls, holding up Gary's detailed notebooks. Every racist complaint he'd filed was coded documentation of drug deals, using racial profiling as a smokescreen for his criminal enterprise. Meanwhile, at the festival, Vanessa takes the stage to address the gathered crowd. "Today marks a new chapter for our community," she announces, her voice carrying the weight of both professional triumph and personal vindication. "We've proven that when we stand together, document the truth, and support each other, justice prevails." Jamal's live stream captures the moment, his followers flooding the comments with messages of support and similar stories from their own communities. His social media campaign, which started with a disrupted birthday party, has evolved into a movement inspiring other neighborhoods to stand up against discrimination and hidden criminal activities. Maya and her Youth Alliance members gather around their information booth, where they've created a timeline of events leading to this moment. "See how everything connected?" she explains to younger children, showing how their community documentation efforts revealed the truth behind Gary's actions. The investigation reveals that Gary's operation extended beyond their neighborhood, with connections to larger criminal networks. His racist harassment hadn't just been personal prejudice. It had been a calculated strategy to keep attention focused on his targets rather than his own activities. As evening falls, the Lewis family returns home to find their neighbors lining the street, holding candles in a show of solidarity. The security cameras that once documented harassment now record a moment of community triumph. Someone starts singing "Lean on Me," and others join in, their voices rising in harmony. Vanessa receives official recognition from the Civil Rights Division for her work in documenting the case. Anthony's FBI team commends the community's role in gathering evidence while maintaining safety protocols. But perhaps most significantly, their neighborhood becomes a model for other communities facing similar challenges. The following weekend, the Lewis family hosts another party, this time a celebration of community victory. The same backyard that once drew Gary's suspicious surveillance now fills with neighbors sharing food, laughter, and plans for the future. Children play freely, no longer worried about being photographed or reported. Jamal and Maya create a documentary about their experience, featuring interviews with community members and footage from their security cameras. It becomes part of a larger educational program about combating racism and criminal exploitation in residential neighborhoods. The real heroes, Anthony tells a local news reporter, are the community members who refused to be divided, who supported each other, and who helped expose the truth. The story makes national headlines, not just for the arrest, but for how a community transformed harassment into unity. The Lewis family's security cameras remain in place, but now they record a different story. Neighbors greeting each other warmly, children playing together across cultural boundaries, and a community that has learned the power of standing together against both visible and hidden threats. As Gary awaits trial, his house is converted into a community center, symbolically transforming a place of division into one of unity. The center's first program, fittingly, is a youth-led initiative about community documentation and civil rights, coordinated by Jamal and Maya. The story ends where it began, with a family gathering. But this time, as the Lewis family celebrates with their neighbors, the security cameras capture only joy, unity, and the triumph of a community that refused to be divided by hate or intimidated by crime. Their experience becomes a testament to the power of documentation, solidarity, and unwavering pursuit of justice, proving that the strongest defense against both racism and crime is a community united in truth and purpose.